My Lords, before I call on Lord Caine to ask his private notice question on recent disturbances in Ballymena, I remind the House that a number of individuals have been charged with criminal offences relating to these events. Noble Lords are free to discuss in general terms what has happened, but should not refer to specific individuals who have been charged and are awaiting trial, or engage in any discussion or speculation about individual cases, as all such matters are sub judice. Private notice question on disorder in Ballymena, Lord Caine.
My Lords, I beg leave to ask the question of which I have given private notice. The question is as follows: to ask His Majesty's Government what assessment they have made of the disorder in Ballymena.
My Lords, the recent scenes of civil disorder which we have seen in Ballymena have no place in Northern Ireland. The attacks on police officers as they work to keep people safe and on property are wholly unacceptable. I'd like to express my sincere thanks to the PSNI, the Northern Ireland Fire and Rescue Service and the Northern Ireland Ambulance Service, who have worked in difficult conditions over the past few days to keep people safe. My thoughts and prayers are with those officers still receiving treatment and with the communities across Northern Ireland who woke up this morning very scared.
My Lords, I'm very grateful to the Noble Baroness, the Minister. We too condemn unreservedly the appalling acts of racist thuggery in Ballymena, for which there can be not a single shred of justification. There is nothing remotely British about wrapping oneself in the Union flag, attacking migrants, forcing people from their homes and scapegoating entire communities anywhere in the United Kingdom. I also commend, like the Noble Baroness, the bravery and resolve of the Police Service of Northern Ireland and the other emergency services who have our unstinting support, and our thoughts are also with the more than 30 officers who have been injured. Could the Noble Baroness tell the House what conversations the Secretary of State has had with the Justice Minister over levels of support for the PSNI and what contingencies are in place for additional resources should the violence be sustained over a period or spread elsewhere? One of the most effective deterrents is for offenders to be dealt with quickly and effectively through the courts. Given that we still have some cases pending from the disorder last summer, what conversations are taking place about the need significantly to speed up the operation of the criminal justice system in Northern Ireland?
I thank the Noble Lord for his comments, especially about our incredibly brave security and police personnel who have been running towards danger, as many of us have watched on television over the last 48 hours. The Noble Lord raises an appropriate point in terms of conversations between the Secretary of State and the Northern Ireland Executive and Assembly to make sure that the appropriate support is in place. My Lord, Noble Lords may be aware that Sir John Boucher is in the process of submitting a request to the National Police Coordination Centre for mutual aid to support current policing operations. The Secretary of State is having active conversations both with the Minister for Justice but also the PSNI and hopes to visit Ballymena in the coming days.
My Lords, from these benches we also utterly condemn in the strongest possible terms the mindless violence perpetrated by a small number of people on the back of what was intended to be a peaceful demonstration. I would also like to commend the PSNI for their work in trying to contain the violence, and our thoughts are with those officers who have been injured. Can the Minister say what meetings she has had with community leaders and whether the Government intend to give additional support for community cohesion projects in Northern Ireland?
My Lord, I'm pleased that we all share the same tone with regards to current events and what's happening. I think the policing family are currently having to cope with a great deal, knowing that there may well be further operations in due course, and I'm pleased the whole House sends their support. Noble Lords would have seen, as I have, horrendous images of what's actually happened within the community, and as we saw both last summer and at various points of community tension across the United Kingdom. This is not something that is now going to be solved tomorrow. Community cohesion efforts will have to continue for months and years to rebuild what has been broken over the last 24 hours. the Northern Ireland office officials have been meeting and engaging with community groups and will continue to do so. And with regards to additional funding, I was pleased that the Chancellor during the spending review announced an £11 million pot for community cohesion projects for Northern Ireland going forward.
My Lords, my Lords, my Lords, my Lords.
I live in Ballymena, and it's awful to see what happened there. I think it must have taken enormous courage for officers to face the petrol bombs and other missiles which were hurled at them. I salute that courage, and I condemn absolutely what happened on the streets of our town. But, my Lords, is the noble Baroness, the Minister, aware that the PSNI has only 6,200 officers? Had police numbers in Northern Ireland kept pace with those in England and Wales and the numbers to which the noble Lord Hanson referred previously, we would have had 8,000 police officers. My Lords, we don't have enough police officers. PSNI still face national security risks and police them, and they are still at risk of murder and attack every day. My Lord's, legacy cost us over the last 10 years £160 million. That would have given us at least 3,000 extra officers, and the PSNI can't recruit any more officers within the current budget. So can the noble Baroness, the Minister, tell us not that policing is a devolved matter, but what steps Her Majesty's Government is taking to provide real ring-fence funding for legacy costs attributable to the long periods of direct rule in order to allow our police service to recruit more officers so that officers may police safely and the people of Ballymena and Northern Ireland may be safe.
The noble lady has raised this issue with me several times, and unfortunately my position cannot change. This is a devolved matter. My Lords, at the other end of the building today, the Chancellor announced a record £19.3 billion of funding for the Northern Ireland Executive. It is up to the Executive as part of and we were all delighted to see Stormont return, but it's up to the Executive for how they allocate that resourcing. The Barnet Agreement has a 24% additional consequential in order to ensure that there is appropriate funding to recognise the special status of Northern Ireland. But the noble lady does raise a genuinely important point, which is that, and the new new approach that was announced by the Executive promised to get a number of officers in line to 7,500. They are short and efforts need to be made. That is why we've also announced additional security funding of 38 million, an increase from the last government, in order to ensure that that amount of money can be ring-fenced to reflect the additional security situation in Northern Ireland, so that other resources can be deployed for the rest of PSNI.
My Lords, my Lords.
First of all,
my Lords, in support of the request made for Baroness O'Loan, we're very well aware of the position in the political situation in the Northern Ireland Executive, and in view of that political situation, could the noble lady, the Minister, my noble friend, talk to her friend, the Secretary of State, to ensure that this issue of ring-fence funding for the PSNI is considered, and there is an uplift equivalent to police forces in England and Wales. I deplore the thuggery and the racist violence in Ballymena over the last 2 days, where there were attacks on the police service of Northern Ireland and on ethnic minorities, similar to what happened whenever I was Minister in DSD back in 2009. And we had to take action then on this to protect those people. So therefore, will my noble friend the Minister join with me in urging local political leaders in Ballymena and further afield in Northern Ireland to take and show the path of real leadership, and not just seek to explain the context for the violence, but urge the rioters to stop rioting, to get off the streets, and to ensure protection for local communities, including those from ethnic minorities and from the police service in Ballymena.
I thank my noble friend for the question and for the work that she and the noble lady have done in terms of advocating consistently for funding for PSNI. I will continue to have the conversation with the Secretary of State, and the government does recognise the difficult financial position the PSNI faces, which is why we are making sure that funding is available. My Lords, on the substantive point of my noble friend's question, I think the onus is on all of us, including members of your Lordship's House, to remember our tone and the responsibilities that we all have. That includes every single politician in Northern Ireland. I, for one, was delighted to see a joint statement from the executive signed by every political party calling for quiet and peace and for people to come off the streets. My Lords, this is not a time for politics. It is a time for peace and security on the streets of Northern Ireland. There is a responsibility on all of us to deliver it.
Yeah. My Lords, my Lords, my Lords. Can I join with others, first of all, in commending the efforts and the bravery of the police and the other emergency services in dealing with the appalling situation of the last 48 hours, and also unreservedly and unequivocally condemn the violence that has taken place in Ballymena. Whatever the underlying issues that are there in Ballymena, nothing can ever justify the thuggery that has been perpetrated there. Can I ask the Minister, and she has heard it from different parts of this House, that the Chief Constable has for some time been highlighting the very major problems that are there in terms of funding. And while I appreciate that the government's response is that ultimately a lot of this is a devolved issue, can I ask the Minister what actions the government is taking to help provide a strategic solution to the problems of under-resourcing of policing in Northern Ireland beyond simply short-term mutual aid assistance?
The noble Lord is absolutely right that there is a responsibility on the British government to work with police forces across the United Kingdom. We are, and that doesn't just always include money. So in terms of sharing best practice, in terms of funding that has been made available for public sector transformation works, making sure that we are working hand in hand with the PSNI is an incredibly important role. And the noble Lord will be as aware as I of the ongoing comments by John Boucher about the funding and requirements he needs. My Lords, I hope everybody is listening, but I promise him that the Secretary of State is speaking to him regularly.
My Lords, can I first of all apologise for my inadvertent failure to declare an interest when asking a question a week ago of the Minister, Lord Coker, on the SDR. As regards this particular question, can I say that my sympathies lie entirely with Baroness Alone and Baroness Ritchie? I fully understand the delicacy of relationships when we are dealing with a devolved institution. Nevertheless, it seems to me the logic of our position when the PSNI are confronted with at least two major issues that are not devolved issues, but are actually UK-wide issues, which is the legacy and secondly counter-terrorism, that there may be some way of supplementing the normal grants in view of the fact that these are UK-wide issues. And I know it's not easy, but I would be obliged if my noble friend was to at least seek to inject that into the conversations with the Secretary of State.
My noble friend is absolutely right. His experiences of bringing people from across Northern Ireland together are one of the reasons why we are now in a position where we are with peace in Northern Ireland, and we're talking about appalling disturbances in the UK, but that are not of what happened during the Troubles. With regards to legacy, there will be many opportunities, I don't doubt, to discuss in your Lordship's House how we will fund legacy going forward, though funding is in place. And with regards to funding for the additional security, national security impact, my Lords, the Chancellor in the other place did announce during the spending review that over the course of the spending review, there will be allocated an extra £113 million to PSNI. That is in addition to the grant that is direct from the United Kingdom government and is in addition to the grant that they receive from the Northern Ireland Executive.
My Lords are right that there's no justification for the riots, and they are depressing to see. However, has the Minister noted that commentators for some time have noted that local people have been raising immigration-related issues as a source of tensions, what indeed the original peaceful demonstration was about. So can I ask, what are the government's plans to tackle the specific underlying community issues that these horrible riots have thrown up?
My Lords, I think it's very important that we understand exactly what happened and what has happened in Northern Ireland. While I can't comment on specific cases, the original vigil was not specifically about immigration, but was about a much wider issue and about something that had happened. With regards to the issue of immigration, my Lords, I have the statistics about the impact or not on this part of Northern Ireland. The reality is, though, that what we have seen in the last 48 hours is that members of the community, wherever they were born, have been caught up in violence, have been scared, and there is an onus on all of us to make sure that both what we're talking about deals with some of the underlying issues as exist across the United Kingdom, but also deal with the specifics of rebuilding a community that has been touched by horrendous violence.
My Lords, the time allowed for this question has now elapsed. Shall we take a moment or two to reassemble the benches?
My Lords, before we move on to the next item of business, can I refer the House to the guidance for ping pong as set out on today's list? We have 3 items of very important voting business before the House today. I want to ensure that all items are considered properly and in a timely manner.
My Lord, consideration of Commons amendments in the Armed Forces Commissioner Bill, Lord Coker.
My Lords, I beg to move that the Commons amendment be now considered.
The question is that the Commons amendment be now considered. As a matter of that opinion, will seek content. Contrary not content, the contents have it. Motion A, Lord Coker.
My Lords, I beg to move